It is that time of the week. It's Watch News Weekly. Let's jump right into it. An upgrade on a military watch, as they dubbed it. I talked about Breguet numerous times and other brands within the Swatch group like Blancpain, like Le Chute, a lot of iconic brands that have sort of been, for the lack of a better word, just stagnant, right? And when it comes to Blancpain, you've often heard me say, get off the 50 fathoms kick. When it comes to Breguet and their sports watches, I've always said, get off the Type 20 kick. A little bit of trivia for you, the Breguet Type 20, which is the new version, which is the new release we're going to talk about, was actually made for the French military and their pilots, and they were trying to come up with a name, and back and forth, they decided, well, we'll just call it Type 20. And 20 was actually the number of the contract that they signed to make those watches. I know, very, very creative. But we're not here to talk about history. We're here to talk about the new release, the new Type 20, reference number 2067R, and some other letters. And basically what they did is they swapped out the stainless steel from some other versions with rose gold. Notably, they introduced something amazingly avant-garde, something that's gonna blow everybody's socks off. They introduced a ceramic bezel. I know, exciting, I was being sarcastic. This is actually the first time Breguet is introducing not only the ceramic bezel, this is the first time they're actually introducing the use of ceramic in their watches. How far behind does that put them? Or does it put them in the league of their own where they don't have to copy people? But eventually they did it with this particular watch. A lot of changes to the dials. They did carry over a lot of the same from previous versions, but a lot of changes to the dials specifically. So the black matte dial was updated by blue sunburst dials. The hands were upgraded as well to syringe style. Now, this is obviously not the first time they're doing the Type 20 watch. And when I say Type 20, I'm generalizing it to Type 20, 21, 22, AIIRO, Nouvelle, and so on and so forth. The first time they did a gold piece was back in 1957, just I think 6 years post creating the original Type 20. They only made 3 examples. I've never seen one, never held one, would love to get a hold of one. I'm sure if one were to come out in the market, it would sell for buku dollars in auction, or maybe not, considering current popularity of Breguet. Breguet is the godfather of all watchmaking to me. The amount of inventions under this man's belt is just unbelievable, and you guys can Google it. The list is long. I'm not going to go through it right now, which is why I always feel bad and when I see what's happening in the general public eye and the popularity of the brand. It should be at the top. It always should be at the top. But again, I'm getting off topic. They did, in the 90s, then produce the Type 20 in gold, yellow gold, white gold. They made it in platinum with a beautiful blue dial, if you guys remember those, and sort of that high polish finish on the bracelet and the case. But with all that said, looking at the picture of this watch, I think this watch is an absolute knockout. The NATO strap that they put the watch on that actually has rose gold accents to match the watch is absolutely amazing. They did it in a special box, which is meant to mimic an airplane wing. Well, that's not new. The older Type 20s came in a box that looked like a piece of airplane, and the way the watch sat inside the case, if it were to come off, it would literally mangle and scratch up the watch if it bounced around that case. But again, you know me, I'm a stickler on packaging. Under the wing of Swatch groups, they've been super quiet. Now, does that mean they maybe just have a solid group of clientele that's very conservative, very quiet? They don't need to be hyped. They don't need to be on wrists of popular stars and so on and so forth. Maybe that's the approach the Swatch Group takes with Breguet. To me, it's a shame because I know the capabilities of the brand. I know the history of the brand. It's near and dear to my heart. I always loved Breguet and still love Breguet. Is this a move in the right direction? I think so. But as I told somebody I spoke with from Blancpain, get off the 50 fathoms kick, and I'll say the same to Breguet and get off the Type 20 kick. Give me a new watch. Give me a new line. And I think the solution for Breguet, if you're listening, Swatch Group, is to tighten up on the lines and the models within each line. Make the brand a little bit more exclusive. Be like Lange, for example. Cut down your production. I don't do a lot of selling. And if you ask me how many times a day somebody has called me and asked for Breguet, doesn't happen every day. Maybe it happens couple of times a month. Will this be a deal anytime soon? I don't know. Overall, taking everything aside, without being biased of what's going on with the company, what's been happening over the last few years, I think this watch is definitely a knockout. Something I would definitely wear. Just a good-looking watch, you know. Because at the end of the day, I look at a watch from an aesthetics perspective, like I hope most people do, not an investment perspective. And aesthetically, I think this is an A+. Oh, speaking of Lange, the Lange Handwekskunst I don't know. It's a German word that means craftsmanship, okay? And what they've done is they came out with something which I also feel is an absolute knockout, a limited edition of 25 pieces, boutique only. They're going the same route and following the same footsteps of what Audemars Piguet did, what Francois did at Audemars Piguet, and I think they're doing a wonderful job at it. What this is commemorating is the 25th anniversary of the Datograph. Now, the Datograph is a very, very important watch in the big scheme of things over the last 30 years. Why do I say that? Because that's the one watch that made everybody and their mother recognize that we should probably start making our own in-house movements. So when a company like Patek Philippe, who at the time was making their flagship chronograph, the 5070, white gold, yellow gold, rose gold, and platinum, they were using the famed Lemania movement, which was an amazing machine, an amazing chronograph. It opened up their eyes when Lange debuted their Datograph, and what a chronograph it was, and what a chronograph it is today. It is an absolutely amazing chronograph, and I've said it numerous times. I believe the quality of not just that chronograph, but Lange's overall watchmaking is superior to that of Patek Philippe. Now, what they did here to commemorate this is they basically made a watch that is anything short of breathtaking as far as I'm concerned. I am a bit biased. I happen to love the brand. I love Lange. What they did here is just truly amazing. With the 25 pieces, the decorations that they put onto the watch technically makes them all one of, because no one will be the same. Because you're talking about tremblage engraving on this watch, the different color subdials, the dial in its own, which technically is unique because that dial cannot be repeated as they make 25. And there's going to be slight variations. If you put two side by side and you loop them, you'll see there'll be some variations in the decorations. I think that all the gold markings, because at a first glance, you say, oh my God, everything is in gold. Everything is just gold, gold, gold. But look how well that works against the case. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous Lange. They haven't announced the retail price on this watch yet. I don't even know if they would, because if it's boutique only, it's probably going to go to VIP clients. Expect to have these things show up on a secondary eventually, maybe one or two, most likely way over list. If you look in the past, there were editions made for Singapore, there were editions made for specific boutiques in a very, very low productions, like the 10 to 25 range, and almost all of them fetched big dollars in auction and sold on a secondary for over list. Personally, I would love to have one of these in my collection, but you guys know me. The minute I put something in my collection, one of you calls me and says, Roman, I want that watch. And I said, well, it's mine. Well, I said, well, give me yours and find yourself another, and that never happens. Hence, I stopped keeping watches in my personal collection for that very reason. Let's go to the next piece of news, and that's going to be Rolex. There's a new Rolex book coming out on the history of the Submariner, and you must be thinking to yourself, well, what's the big deal? There's a million books on Rolex out there. Well, this is the first authorized history of the Submariner. There's a key difference here, because if somebody is out there writing an authorized history of an item or a particular model from Rolex, that means they probably got access to their archives. And their archives are probably some of the most secretive documents in the world today. It's like trying to access the archives of NASA or CIA, and rightfully so, because if all those records were made public in terms of how many were made, how they were made, what's rare, what's not rare, you leave sort of that mystery in the market, which is what makes Rolex probably one of the most, if not the most collectible brand in the world, if you're talking about the world of vintage. So 252-page book going back to the 50s and all the way out to today to see what has happened with Submariner. The fact that the author was giving access to the archives is going to provide a lot of fresh information to collectors and to dealers likewise. I'm going to order one. Or pre-order one. I think they're selling on Amazon for about 125 bucks. You can pre-order it, and I'm going to do just the same. Nicholas Foltz is the gentleman that wrote the book. He's actually an English historian. He's written a multitude of books when it comes to horology. The Impossible Collection of Watches probably be the most famous one, along with Patek Philippe, an authorized biography, which again was done in conjunction with Patek Philippe, so you can actually see that what he wrote is actually true, because there's a lot of books out there where that have a lot of assumptions and they're not technically authorized history books. That one in particular is, and another one I read by him was Time Tamed, along with a bunch of other titles. Just Google his name, you'll see his books, wonderful books. If you like horology, certainly is a good idea. But yeah, we're not talking about a watch release, we're not talking about anything in the watch industry, we're talking about a book, but it is important because it is the first of its kind, and I actually look forward to reading it if I have time. FREDERIQUE Constant, a brand that's been around for a while, obviously has rich history dating back. Again, one of those revival brands that was revived at a later time, stayed dormant for a little while. And look, there's a lot of brands out there like that. Graham, since 1695. Now, they haven't been continuously running since 1695. In fact, not a whole lot of big boys out there that have been continuously running for that amount of time. It's really just a handful. But I see nothing wrong with taking a brand and actually reviving the name, because you didn't hurt the brand history, its beginnings, any and all innovations that the brand has come up with over the years, et cetera, et cetera. And just like many brands out there outside of the watch world, a brand could have been born 400 years ago, but you know, it could have stayed dormant, could have went out of business. Somebody goes out, buys the rights to the name, to equipment, et cetera, and all of a sudden the brand is reborn. Does that make it a bad thing? Absolutely not. And FREDERIQUE has been one of those brands that have been on my radar for quite some time. Originally they came out of the gate, it's known as a heavily discounted brand until they got their distribution in order and so on and so forth. But as of late, they've been coming out with great things. Case in point, the watch we're looking at today, which is the classic MOONPHASE date. Now, it's not a new watch. It's an existing watch that they've made before, a popular watch, but they knocked it out of the park aesthetically by doing what? By using malachite. Malachite, to me, is one of the most beautiful stones out there. In fact, I have various antique pieces at my house, starting from ashtrays to little trinket boxes and so on and so forth, because predominantly this was found in Russia, and that's where I'm originally from. So there was a lot of cool antique things made out of malachite. And when you put a malachite dial on a watch, I believe that the watch becomes alive. It literally becomes alive, because malachite is a type of stone, it's a wavy sort of stone. I'm sure you guys are familiar. Again, no one dial is going to be the same. There's going to be variation. And for some reason, when I look at a piece of malachite, regardless of whether it's in a watch or just out in the wild as a trinket, for me, for some reason, that item seems to come alive. Again, personal opinion. You guys can be the judge yourself. Worth mentioning, limited edition, 36 pieces, retails around 30,000 euros. And look at the dial. The dial undoubtedly steals the show. The MOONPHASE disc is also made in a darker green color. I like the fact that it's in white gold. I feel like green and white go extremely, extremely well together. Obviously, the matching green crocodile strap. Aesthetically, very classy, very clean. And again, obviously the malachite dial is the one that's going to steal the show. As far as the brand itself, what does the future hold? Do I get a lot of requests for it? Do we sell a lot of them? No. Once in a blue moon, I'll pick one up, sell it. Once in a blue moon, we'll get a request. But I think the company is moving in the right directions, and I'm excited to see what they have in store going into the future, because for a white gold malachite dial watch, this is an extremely reasonable price. That said, Patek Philippe on it, that'd be over 100. You guys understand that. But that's why Patek Philippe is where Patek Philippe is, and FREDERIQUE is where FREDERIQUE is. I did visit them during Watches and Wonders. I saw a couple of really cool things from them, so hoping to see more. GIRARD-PERREGAUX LAUREATO, a watch that's near and dear to my heart for a few reasons. Number one, everybody's screaming that, oh my God, it's a Nautilus wannabe. Oh my God, it's a Royal Oak wannabe. Adolfo Natalini is actually the guy that designed this watch. Most people will mistake this for a Gerald Genta design due to similarities. What this watch is a limited edition Japan for AIIRO, however you pronounce that. Now what this is celebrating, and this is another cool piece of history, is the 160th anniversary of GIRARD-PERREGAUX's relations in Japan. And you're thinking, oh my God, speaking of long-running continuous brands, right? And what you're thinking, because GIRARD-PERREGAUX has been around since late 1700s, right? Japan relationship 160 years ago, what went down? Some of you guys may be aware of this piece of history, some may not, so I'll tell you. Back in 1860, Francois Perregaux, he was GIRARD-PERREGAUX's brother-in-law, I believe, set up shop in Japan. There was an office in Yokohama, and at the time, it made it the first Swiss office on Japan soil, which is pretty important. Of course, by now, there are plenty of Swiss offices and brands and boutiques and distribution centers, et cetera, in Japan. It's because Japan is a huge market. But the funny part is at that time, Japan did not use the same timekeeping as they did in Europe. So, like the first exports, they were considered curiosities, novelties, whatever you call it, but not really useful. Of course, that changed shortly after 1873 with the creation of the Japanese railroad network. The country finally adopted the Western way of keeping time, and GP took a humongous advantage of it because their experts rose tremendously. He was kind of like there before the watch market started, and when it did start, you know, he was pretty much the only game in town, so he did extremely well with that. So two models, time and date, and a chronograph, priced $18,000 and $19,700. I think GIRARD-PERREGAUX is one of those brands that prices their more or less entry-level models fairly reasonably for what they are, and they're making 100 pieces each. Again, nothing outside the lines when it comes to design of the watch. They're sticking to the DNA of the LAUREATO, and I love that. Great job, GIRARD-PERREGAUX. Again, Not doing anything out of the ordinary. No doubt these are probably going to go to Japan, and I'm sure they'll sell out quickly. Now, GIRARD-PERREGAUX is under new direction. The group that it's under is the same group that owns Ulysse Nardin, and their new CEO is doing wonderful things to bring both companies to the forefront where I personally think they rightfully deserve to be. And for our last story, Audemars Piguet. We're going to talk about the Code 1159 skeleton tourbillon, flying tourbillon, which is done in the shades of gray. Let's call this one 50 Shades of Gray for the lack of better terminology. Now, I think officially it's called the Shades of Gray. Now, a lot of controversy when Code 1159 came out. Oh, this is the best you can come up with. This is what you did after years and years of research and so on and so forth. And I've always defended the Code 1159 because personally, I actually like it. Of course, then COVID hits, the craze hits. All of a sudden, Code 1159 is selling like hotcakes just the same. And they're still selling and selling well. But one of the things you guys have to understand is that in every watch brand, you're going to have X amount of lines. You're going to have your flagship winning line, and you're going to have some those other lines, and you're going to have some lines that are dog shit, for the lack of better terms, that nobody wants to buy. But that changes, and that changes from time to time to time. And companies know that trends tend to change. Quick example, the hottest the watch market has been prior to the COVID craze was probably 2005, 6, and 7, leading up to the housing crisis, right? And guess what was hot from Patek back then? It was the dress models. It was the 5970s, the 5960s. It was the annual calendars. It was the perpetual calendars. It was the celestial models, the 5102s, the white gold one, the yellow gold one. Later, they made the platinum and two-tone. It was rose and platinum. It was like one of the hottest watches on the market, and they were selling through the roof for ridiculous markups in comparison to that particular market at a time. Nautiluses, Aquanauts, they were second sort. Nobody, okay. It was sort of like, well, you know what? I can't afford a 5970, or I can't really afford a nice gold dressy Patek. Let me pick up a steel Aquanaut. I remember times where I couldn't give away an Aquanaut. They were trading at under $10,000. I remember selling a Patek Nautilus 3710, which is 3700 but with the power reserve, for under $10,000, and I was happy about it. Trends do tend to change, and companies understand that. And I believe the company's goals, and that of including Audemars Piguet, is the fact that, A, what is my next canvas, right? And numerous times you have heard me and Adrian say that the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak is one of the greatest blank canvases out there, right? Which is why they're so successful with continue making iterations of the same thing over and over and over, much like a Rolex GMT, much like the President, much like the Submariner, right? Subtle changes, same watch, right? Well, guess what? I think the Code 1159 is another great blank canvas that Audemars Piguet came up with, because if the trends change tomorrow, what do you fall back on? How do you can't put all your eggs in one basket, which today seems to be the Royal Oak and the Royal Oak Offshore, right? So you have to have something else. Now, the old Jules Audemars Piguet is gotten played out, for the lack of a better term. The Edward Piguet, the rectangular model, was never really cool was never really good out of the gate, right? But once you get a formula where you have a winning line, your Royal Oak Offshores, right? And once in a while, you come out with some oddball pieces. For example, the remaster. I think the last one is amazing, but the jury is still out on it. You guys can comment below what you think. Would love to hear from you. I think I got to see that watch in person when I was in Geneva, and I think the watch is absolutely amazing. I'm a little bit biased. I happen to like the brutalist architectural style, so that makes me personally biased. Some may not like it at all, but you still have to have another steady line in which you can showcase your capabilities. Audemars Piguet is a complications powerhouse. They make some of the best complicated timepieces in the world. They've been doing it out of the gate when the company first started for Tiffany & Co. before Audemars Piguet was even born, right? So they're able to stay true to the DNA, but some things you just don't want to showcase in a Royal Oak or a Royal Oak Offshore, because it's not for everyone. There's people out there that are looking for complicated timepieces, and generally, if you look at complicated timepieces, minute repeaters, tourbillons, certain perpetual calendars, or combinations thereof, what do you normally see? You usually see a dress watch. You don't see this, right? And sometimes it seems even awkward. When I walked into the AP boutique in Geneva, they showed me the Royal Oak minute repeater ceramic. You know what I told the salesperson there? I said, I think this watch to me just doesn't make sense. I want to see that in a nice, dressy, precious metal case, platinum, white gold. Give it to me in a more of a dressy environment. Now, it's a wonderful minute repeater. It's extremely difficult to execute a minute repeater in a ceramic case because, you know, there's sound involved now. But that watch on the rubber strap, I simply told him it doesn't make sense, right? So by having a line like code 1159, which to me is kind of like the best of both worlds. It's a nice dressy watch, it's got a nice size to it, and there's still like a Royal Oak sandwich in between if you look closely on the side, right? So again, this is me just sort of babbling in regards to all of this. Obviously, I'm here to tell you about the new watch. Again, similar to its predecessor, right? 41 millimeters inside, 13.8 millimeter thickness, right? Still a fairly large watch. Again, the octagonal middle case I told you, which is that Royal Oak sandwich in between, right? And really, again, it's the colorway, right? They changed the colorway. They made the colorway look absolutely amazing as far as I'm concerned. They gave it a gray rubber strap. It's like a textured, rubber-coated texture strap, I should say, rather. It's not fully rubber, I believe. The ceramic grip on top of the crown, you know, gives the watch sort of a casual look, which kind of makes it either sporty or makes it dressy. Audemars Piguet understands design. Whoever's designing these pieces for them, and I don't know who that person or people are, they're doing a wonderful, wonderful job. And as long as they continue doing what they're doing, which is creating complicated timepieces that are aesthetically pleasing, the code 1159 is going to stick around for quite some time, and eventually people will get used to the fact that, hey, this is the other line from Audemars Piguet. This is the other blank canvas from Audemars Piguet. And they're going to say, you know what? Great job. If I'm looking for high complications in the likes of this flying tourbillon, I don't know if I want to reach for a Royal Oak. I think I'm going to reach for a jewel. I think I'm going to reach for a cold 1159. And this is what I feel this is all about, which is why Audemars Piguet is sticking with this particular line. And to be fair, I can't wait to see what the next line is going to look like. One that's going to be sort of like that permanent line. And at the end of the day, they're doing a better job than Breguet, that has a multitude of lines with a multitude of different model watches that unfortunately don't sell or get requested. Stuff like this still sells, and it still sells well because of the name, because of the design, because of the overall aesthetics, and because obviously the horology that's inside these timepieces. So good job, AP. Love the gray, or 50 Shades of Gray, or whatever the hell you want to call it. Beautiful watch. So that's going to conclude today's Watch News Weekly. Sorry, I started blabbing on a couple of topics, but that's what happens with me. I'm very passionate about this stuff. I'm sure you guys already know that, and I always tell you how it is and quick to give you an opinion. Of course, if you disagree with my opinion, you have something to add to that, or if I may have made a mistake as I'm talking about this off the cuff, by all means, comment below, let me know. I take criticism well. Haven't been on YouTube for quite some time now. I learned how to have thick skin about some of your comments. Other than that, as always, hit the like button if you enjoyed this content. Share this with those that you think may enjoy this content. And if you're not a subscriber watching this, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next week.